if you want to share a screen, maybe you can dive into Sensei.
Sure. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully the SharePoint deities will grace us with working today. So this is actually, I have actually reached out to Adobe and been working with them on some of the proof of concepts over the last actually a couple months at this point around Adobe Sensei and specifically what's available through Adobe I/O, which is actually a bit different from auto tagging. So that's kind of interesting. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what's available in Adobe Experience Manager out of the box. Kind of compare between AEM and I/O, and you'll kind of see that those are actually somewhat different. Walk through the different I/O integrations, and then do a demonstration. I'll actually demonstrate auto tagging in AEM as well as Sensei I/O. And please feel free to chime in if you've got any questions or anything. So in AEM, specifically related to assets, right? Because there are some other features, but related to AEM assets, we have smart tags. And that's probably the one that Adobe's talked about the most. And so, I think if you see in the demonstration, you provide, you upload an asset as you do in Adobe Experience Manager normally, and it provides a list of tags that are automatically generated based on their machine learning. Enhanced smart tags comes along or can be added to that. And with enhanced smart tags, you can actually train the Sensei engine. So Sensei, is a machine learning engine like most AI applications, and you can provide, I believe it's a minimum of 30 images with the same tag, and you essentially assign those to a workflow. It sends them off to Sensei, and then that'll be used to train your client model. So, if you have particular things like, let's say, you're an auto manufacturer, you want to train it with the difference between the different models of car you have, you can do that. Because initially when Sensei rolled out, for example, we had a headset manufacturer they were talking to, and it's not as useful when it just says headset. Oh, that's a headset. That's a headset. Or another one was we were talking about a sports company, and it couldn't tell the difference between a bass and a salmon. It just said fish. So being able to train the model and have it make more intelligent tags comes along with that enhanced smart tags. And then they also do talk about auto crop, and that's kind of interesting because it actually requires another product too. So Adobe's dynamic media. For the demo here, I'm just going to show smart tags because it's really the simplest one to set up, and it's something that, assuming that you have the licensing, it should take a half an hour or less to get it configured on a local environment. It's actually pretty painless. So let's switch over to my browser. Let me move this out of the way so I can see a little bit better. So this is our company sandbox. So it's a Adobe I/O environment that Adobe's given to us for use for demonstrations and this sort of thing. So I've got my local AEM set up. You can see here I get all this information, and then I've got the client secret. This is where I derive all the information that I need for my particular integration. I can make multiple integrations, by the way. So if I want to have different environment setups for dev, staging, prod, if I want to be able to do POCs, do stuff like that, you can make these separate integrations. Oops, went too far. And I just do that from here. So I access an API. I'd select the API that I want to access. And when I configure this the first time, I only select one. You can then come back in and add more integrations. But I would select, I'd select smart content from there. And then I could either update one of these or create the new one. So I'll just go ahead and use that one that I've already created. And once I've got that created the first time, I can go into AEM and go to cloud services, legacy cloud services. For whatever reason, it still exists over here, and find the asset smart tags. Now, it's kind of interesting here is you actually download a certificate out of here. So this certificate is specific to your AEM instance, and you upload that in your public keys here. So you'll actually need to do that to make this thing work. If you upload an incorrect certificate, it'll display a fairly cryptic warning about not being allowed to invoke function or something to that effect. So make sure you download that certificate for every environment, every AEM environment that you want to be able to access your particular your integration. So I'd go in here when I first create it, configure all of these variables. It's fairly straightforward, right? You know, who's ever
Seems like that's some audio issues. Yeah, it's much better now.
Okay, sorry about that. So all the values that you need are right in here. So I configure that, come back into AEM and then I can go into AEM assets. Select a folder here. And one of the things you do need to do as well is configure that folder to be set up to enable smart tags. Make that. And then when I upload an asset, this is from Unsplash, which, by the way, if you do any blogging or anything, it's a great resource. And look at the properties. This one's running. Of course, it's going to be slow. Let me demonstrate this one then. You would see oh my gosh. My apologies, guys. And I've got to actually start the workflow here. And then let's see, damn smart tag assets. My apologies there. So I just missed a step here. So then I need to actually send these through the workflow to do that. Now you can configure your workflows to do this automatically. And that will send the asset through the workflow as soon as it's created, kind of like anything else. You can see it's going through the process here. And now you have my smart tags. My apologies for the little bit of miss there. So these smart tags are ordered by by the system, by its confidence in them. You can actually configure that to be visible. Not that you probably want to do that for most instances. It's just really for your own testing. But this is what you'd see, and I'd be able to search for this asset, and if I search for C, it would come up. So it helps your authors be able to find assets by more than just what someone goes in and physically tags that with. Any questions? So one thing I did want to talk about a little bit is comparing the two. So AEM Smart Tags is a feature. It's built into AEM. It's an out-of-the-box integration. One of the things that's interesting to me is that there's actually a different endpoint for each. So they both use Adobe I/O, but if you call Sensei directly through I/O, you actually hit a different endpoint than if you access it through Adobe Experience Manager. And so Adobe's actually exposing Sensei through two different methods, right? So you have the auto tags, which is that built-in option. It's all through the GUI. And then you have the auto tag REST API that's available through Adobe I/O. And one of the other big differences there is that with smart tags, Adobe's actually sending the image as a binary along with that request. So they construct a post request, they send that out, and that image in AEM is sent. In the I/O option, you actually send a link to the image, which has some kind of interesting implications. One of the other things that was really interesting to me is that they're actually not always in sync, which kind of makes sense because smart tags is different than your Sensei auto tagging, and I think they actually use different data sets and algorithms. but they actually differ a fair bit. So on the left here, you can see what AEM Smart Tags returns for this image in the middle. It's got sunset, lake, water, sky, nature, landscape, sunrise. By the way, comparatively to some other smart tagging solutions, these are great results. They're all pretty accurate. On the other side here, we have Sensei, and it's the same set of results, but you can see the confidences are different, and then it actually orders them differently. It's saying that sky it's more confident in sky than it is with sunset, lake, or water. So just kind of an interesting observation that you actually may get different results depending on which API you call. And I think it all comes down to the data sets that they're working against. And one of the neat things about the Sensei API is you actually have access to many more options than you get with with smart content through AEM. So you have auto crop, and what that one is that it'll return a crop suggestion for the focal point of the image according to AI. So usually it's cropping around a person, but whatever the Sensei engine thinks is the focal point. Auto tag, I think we discussed that ad nauseum, right? Body crop, which will actually send multiple crop points back for the body parts, the parts of the image that contain a body. So if you have an image that has 3 people in it, it should send back 3 different crop locations. Color swatch, produces a color swatch based on the prominent colors or patterns. So it's basically allows you to derive what colors make up an image. Useful if you want to do set the background appropriate to an image before it loads or something like that. Image cutout's kind of neat. So if you've ever seen where you mask an image with a transparent overlay, so that it highlights the center point of the image, that's how that works, and it actually sends back the binary of that. So kind of interesting thing to note here, JSON, binary. But the image cutout will send back an image to overlay over top of that image to highlight the focal point once again. And then I repeated that, but I was supposed to say image quality, and it actually scores the image, based on a number of different dimensions of quality for an image. So send back just a numeric score, and then a list of all the different variables that it looks at to derive that score. And then also, so I don't think this is actually linked, but if you go, and I guess I won't drop that in the chat. If you go to this URL here, Adobe I/O APIs Cloud Platform Sensei Services docs.html, all of this is available as well. So it's a little hard to find, but all of this documentation is available, and it'll provide you with information like, what's the endpoints, what parameters are, that sort of thing. What it doesn't tell you is what you need to be careful about. So I'll talk about a couple of those things. So let's show the demo. So once again, returning to the Adobe I/O console, and I'm actually going to select a different integration here. So what's different here is I do use a lot of the same technical information like the API key, but I need to generate what's called a JWT token, which is essentially a token based on a JSON data feed that's then encrypted with a private key. I'm not going to do it right now because it requires pasting my private key on a webinar, which is generally not considered a great idea. But when I do that, the next step is actually to make an access request. And I'll open up my my Postman here. So I make a request to that to a JWT endpoint with my token, and you can see there's more there, and that returns me. Oh, okay. So if I use the correct token, that'll actually return me a JSON response that I can then use to authenticate my request. So it's a 2-part process. Now I use that auth token, and I would let's see. Yeah, so I would send a request that contains headers with an X API key. So this is kind of important because it's not actually documented. This X API key is your API key for your integration right here. I'd send that result that I get from that JWT request as a bearer token, and then I would send whatever body I want to send. So if I want to send an auto tagging request, this is what that body looks like. It's got the URL of the image that I want to have auto tagged, and then a configuration value. So for example, I'm saying, hey, send back 100 results, a maximum of 100 results, and a minimum confidence of 0.5. So that's a 0 to 1 scale. How confident are you? And if the network deities are agreeing with me, I should get a response here in just a sec. That'll have, yep. So this, so it's a JSON with the list of tags and confidence. Sorry, you saw that live. Just to show another one. So this is what I'd send if I want to get image quality. So again, Sensei, Adobe I/O, it's functions. So just a little bit of background here as well. Adobe I/O is running in OpenWhisk. These are all implemented as OpenWhisk functions that actually call back to a Sensei backend. So it's going through OpenWhisk to make these requests. But with image quality, I just send the URL of the image that I want to look at. This is a pretty decent image, so I'll show that. Nice picture of a starry sky. So it sends back a 0.93 quality. Here's all the different things. So color harmony, depth of field, etc. Right? Now, if I take this other image here that's maybe a little bit less high quality, taken with a potato, it seems. You can see here in just a sec, it returns a much lower quality score. So it is actually, doing some heuristics to understand the quality of these images. And then one other thing I did want to show is so not going to, well, if one were to decompile the code, one could see that it's sending requests here. So this is actually what AEM is sending in terms of requests. You get that, see that marketing cloud or mc.adobe.io, marketing cloud smart content API tag. It is sending through an actual image here. So let me select a file. That's not what I wanted. So that's part of the binary request. This should look pretty similar, right? Maximum number of results, minimum confidence, and again, that client ID. Oh, my OAuth token is not valid anymore, and I need to refresh the OAuth token, but I'm not going to right now. So this is actually the request that that AEM is sending versus the one that the Sensei AI endpoint is sending. So you can see there are some pretty significant differences between the two. Any questions?
I have a question that is the Sensei out of the box, or is it a separate license?
Yeah, so you'll definitely need to license these and work that out with Adobe. And some of this is not is still in beta. All the documentation's out there, so I don't think I'm showing anything that's not available. But some of this may not be quite production ready. So just a word of warning there as well.
Hey Dan, Sagar here. Once you receive the JSON response from the specific URL, how will you consume this? How will you make your image render using these dimensions or using the suggested pixels or suggested quality measures?
Yeah, so I think some of these are more informational, right? So your image quality, for example, would be purely informational. The use case that I could think for that is, if you're searching for images and if you had that quality index stored, you could use that as a ranking feature when you're returning image results, right? So let's say that you have thousands of images. You want to find one that contains a picture of a doctor and is also high quality because you have a whole bunch of photographers out there taking what could be junk images. That quality score would help you rank the images as they're getting returned and return the highest quality images first that match your term.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it all depends on, that's one of the things about AI is that, I think a lot of times people are like AI, it'll solve everything. You kind of have to have a use case, right?
Yeah, but still, Yeah, we need to have some kind of service which will consume and then
Yeah.
returns the appropriate
Yeah.
images. Good, thank you.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, all of this depends on having something to use, to use these images or this data that's coming back. The same thing if you think about with masking. I mean, that'd be really useful if you had a e-commerce system. You wanted to be able to highlight the product within a picture. You could use it that way.
Got it. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions about Sensei?
I have one more question. This is Brahmender here. Is the image getting saved somewhere on Adobe's server when we use this API? I'm asking this question because we follow a very strict privacy policy here as a government body. So we'd like to know how this works at the back end.
So for the okay, so there's probably a couple answers there. One is you'd have to talk to Adobe. For the IO option, I very much doubt it is because it is using OpenWhisk, and OpenWhisk is not very friendly to large requests. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not pulling that image down and saving it off somewhere server side. So you'd probably you would have to talk to Adobe and understand their data retention policies. But I would be surprised if they do keep it, just from a liability perspective.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
One more question. Is it compatible with AEM 6.2? Do you have enough support in 6.2?
I think Smart Tags is 6.3 and up, but I'd have to double check that it's not available on a service pack.
Yeah, I remember it is in service pack. But I wasn't sure if complete features are supported. Which,
Yeah, I'd probably have to you'd have to kind of like check it to be honest. So
no worries. Thanks a lot.
Okay. So I think we're running out of time. And Dan, is there anything else that we want to add to this?
Yeah, just one last thing. I just wanted to put out there a few challenges that I ran into. Right, you do need to have a public URL to use the Sensei IO APIs. So, if you want to keep those images private, it does make that more challenging. And through the IO API, at least at the moment, you cannot train the algorithm. And then finally, limited documentation. So if you look through that link, you'll find that. I'm assuming that'll get resolved, and definitely hopefully in the future we'll have the ability to provide a binary image and train the algorithm and all that through the API. But right now, what's available, these are some of the challenges. That's all I have. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Dan.